Hi, I'm Phoebe Yemi, and this is a scene interview with Rosanagh Griffiths. Rosanagh is the amazing writer, director, producer extraordinaire. She runs a production company called Spinster, and her film Dope Fiend with Channel 4 is absolutely amazing and explores a depiction of ADHD. We're going to be talking today about filmmaking and her advice for young filmmakers. Thank you for being here, Rosanagh.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell us a bit about Dope Fiend and about like the process of making the film?
Yeah, so Dope Fiend is a short film that I shot back in 2022, and released last year. Yeah, it was my third scripted short film that I'd made, and it was the first one that I had gotten a broadcaster commission for. So Film 4 had seen my previous shorts. I'd kind of connected with them, and they asked if I would like to pitch an idea. And I think kind of Dope Fiend was, yeah, something that was kind of a personal story, but was, taking kind of a personal experience and kind of putting it through a kind of genre comedy lens, to, help audiences engage with a subject matter that's close to my heart, but in a way that is makes them think outside the box. So yeah, I'm really proud, and really grateful that everyone's connected with it as much as they have. So
Can you tell us a bit more about like the directorial choices you made in Dope Fiend that you felt like resonated best when with the final film?
yeah, I mean, so for those who haven't seen the film, it's very much kind of mostly set in a kind of space that looks like what we'd recognize as being like a doctor's waiting room and has all the kind of NHS hallmark kind of things. But the character is immediately that we're kind of with for the film is immediately kind of has all of these voices in her head, and they are her own voice, but these kind of pinging around thoughts. And I think that was probably the defining feature of Dope Fiend that makes it kind of sit a bit differently from other short films, is creating this soundscape where essentially I had 5 layers of the protagonist speaking, and I gave each of those layers kind of a different character to form. So, one of them was the character's kind of most like awful thoughts about themselves. One of them was the most anxious thoughts about themselves. One of them was what I affectionately called Oddball, which is a character kind of constantly quoting things, and would pick up little sound bites in the room and then be saying them over again and again, and kind of to create that soundscape was the biggest feat I've ever done as a director to date. But it was really important to me because I think the only references I had of how this should sound were TikTok videos, so no one had really kind of attempted that in a film space to kind of really give that visceral experience of what it's like to live with ADHD. And that was really important to me, is to take the audience on that roller coaster, for them to kind of come to understand it, without ruining too much of the film. I could give away, there's a bit of a twist in there, but I don't want to kind of give that away.
I mean, honestly, I love the twist. So, um, the next question is about the Splashy energy drink advert and what kind of inspired that.
Yeah, I mean, so the film starts with an advert for a can of energy drink called Dope. And it turns out that the protagonist is basically watching this advert on a TV. Interestingly, that was kind of a weird inspiration of Zoolander. Kind of has a similar kind of use of using a pop music and these very intense images to create like a an effect within the film that then is linked to the twist kind of thing. And I think for me, that advert is like what I really wanted to do was give the audience a very big hit of dopamine and like manipulate the things that, cinema has the beauty of doing, which is like really bright, vivid, bold colors, very quick moving edit, and very kind of like intense music. And also kind of incorporating a lot of like queer elements within it as well, purely for the fact that there is a huge kind of crossover between neurodivergence and queer gender divergence. And so, trying to kind of give the audience this very kind of like come from nowhere, smacks you in the face dopamine hit, that then kind of as the film goes on, they're kind of chasing that hit for the rest of the film. And so it was a bit of a kind of ploy to give them something straight out the bat that they were like, you spend the rest of the film wanting to get back to that and wanting to kind of have that, which is exactly the experience that the protagonist is having throughout the film as well. So yeah.
Next question is, what kind of inspired you to take on this project and like explore ADHD?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the last couple of years, we've seen ADHD become a huge subject of discussion. There's been a huge wave of people coming to realize their own neurodivergence, and it's been incredible. I got diagnosed with ADHD coming up 9 years ago, and at the time when I got diagnosed, I'd been misdiagnosed firstly with bipolar and borderline personality disorder. So I'd had these kind of people understand that those conditions are very intense and the impact they have on their life. And when I kind of got properly diagnosed with ADHD, I was a bit like, isn't that what kids have? Like kind of thing. And everything online was kind of backing that up. Everything online was saying this is a kid's thing that most adults grow out of. Obviously now in 2024, we know that that's not the case at all. But I think it took a number of years of me kind of coming to terms with who I was, the fact that I'm extremely disabled by this thing, and also the fact that people do not take ADHD seriously, myself included, like having been, having done that myself. So I kind of really wanted to make Dope Fiend not only as a way to give audiences a chance to understand how intensely living with neurodivergence impacts your life and why it is a disability, but also the film kind of dives into how the people who loved ones who are kind of living with people who have neurodivergence, and that it is hard for them as well. And I think it's kind of trying to find that balance within that of kind of being able to be like, carers also have a hard time. They ultimately love somebody, but they also kind of struggle to understand what that experience is. So I wanted to create a film that basically made people who have neurodivergence, people who are neurodivergent, feel seen, and then people who are loved ones of neurodivergent also feel seen kind of within that. So hopefully it's achieved.
I wish people could like put a VR headset on and like actually experience it. Like that would be nice.
I kind of wanted to create the technology that I hope exists at some point, which is basically like, giving people the ability to walk a day in the shoes of somebody else and what their experience is. I hope if there's something good that comes from AI and all this stuff that's kind of, moving forward at a far too rapid rate, that it will kind of bring empathy into it in some ways. Yeah.
Honestly, I would love that. I feel like once we really like master virtual reality, I just want to force everyone to experience mental health issues personally, just to see how it feels. Because I feel like empathy is really important. I think a lot of people find it hard to empathize until they experience things themselves. Which sort of leads to the next question. So, like you co-wrote Dope Fiend. What was that process like? Was it really difficult writing with someone else? Did the other writer have an experience with ADHD as well?
Yeah, so my co-writer on the project, Kerry Deegan, is somebody who I had been developing a couple of TV projects with, and we'd kind of written a few pilots just together for ourselves. And, when I got this commission, I kind of was like, because the character in the film it's a slight spoiler, but not a complete spoiler. Like, the character in the film is actually somebody who doesn't normally have ADHD, but is experiencing what it's like to have ADHD. The audience don't know that at the start, but we kind of come to find that out. And for me, it was really important to kind of build that character from a place where it was understanding both sides of that. And so Kiri being somebody who, like, A, has her own relationship to neurodivergence, but B, has definitely not got ADHD, like, at all, and is kind of one of those people who has become a bit of a magnet for ADHD people in her life. So kind of, so she we really liked the way that we kind of approach comedy and stuff together, but B, I also knew that she would be able to kind of bring that levity to the other side of that character. And so I kind of said to Film 4 pretty much straight away, I'd really like to write this with someone else, because I also think that collaboration is a huge part of filmmaking, and it's good sometimes to go, it's not about the fact that I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm a good enough writer to do this by myself, but more like I want this to feel nuanced in a way that I think needs another voice within it, kind of thing. Especially also kind of the fact that from the get-go, I wanted the character to be an older Black woman, because the association that we have with ADHD is young white boys, kind of thing. And so I was like, how can I kind of really flip the script on what we kind of have around that? So it's really kind of making sure that it's like, my co-writer was a woman of color, our producer was a woman of color, our story producer is a woman of color, because I like, that's not my experience, but I know that I want to have that representation in the film, because I think it's important to make sure that that representation exists.
Because I know Spinster is like a disabled-led production company, and you're like very disabled-led in your like films. How did you manage to like implement that into the processes of filmmaking?
Yeah, I think a big part of it was the time to take it. I'd love to say we had time to shoot it. The shoot was fairly full on, but I think, you know, when we got into the edit, like I just needed more time, and I was kind of able to say like, I need more time, not purely just to do the edit, but more just like, you know, as a disabled person, you have weeks that you just are not functioning in a capacity that means that you can give your best to creative projects. And so I think Film 4 were huge supports on that, in terms of like being supportive of like getting it done, but also at the same time kind of really letting me guide the pace that I could approach it with. And they were just huge supporters from the get-go on that front. I think as a company, it's like, so Spinster is a production company that I set up purely for the fact of like being able to kind of, you know, make my own projects alongside the production companies that I'm working with on them, but also kind of, you know, support other projects. So I've supported a lot of projects through post-production, because I have a lot of experience working post-production. And I guess kind of being able to help people, accessibility is a huge part of like understanding this industry and kind of navigating it and understanding what certain things mean. And so really kind of, I think my focus is trying to help people, you know, if they come into situations of contract stuff or just negotiation stuff or processes that they just don't understand, I'm there as a person that can be kind of called and go, hey, could you explain this thing to me in more simple, straight terms that are easy to process? And I'm really proud that the company kind of has that open door policy on that front. I'm very community focused, and I always have been in my career, because I think coming up in the industry, I recognized that I wasn't, you know, I was this like kind of dorky, awkward, like early 20s with like a bright green mullet and stuff like that. I just like, I could see that next generations up weren't necessarily going to take me seriously. And I didn't come from connections, didn't come from money. So I was kind of like, I've been very focused on community with my generation. I think that's the thing, is that at some point we're going to be the leaders of this industry. So dinosaurs will die, just let them kind of move their way out. Yeah.
Basically, kind of going over what you just said, can you tell us a bit about your journey into filmmaking?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I know there's a lot of younger people that are going to be watching this, so I think it's really important to kind of understand that I was massive film nerd as a kid. Like I would go to Video Easy, which was the Australian equivalent of like Blockbuster, like on cheap Tuesdays, and hire like 7 films out and watch them every day of the week. Like I was just like that kind of obsessive kid, which I think if you're part of kind of BFI Film Academy, you probably understand that kind of love and desire. Everyone in the industry has that kind of inner child love of films. So I kind of translated that from being obsessed with films to being in my early 20s, had dropped out of uni twice because I didn't know that the fact that that setup didn't function well for me was to do with kind of my neurodivergence. So I kind of moved to the UK, and I was like, my passion has always been film, and I want to kind of try and get a job in it. And I'm very upfront about the fact that my first job I got at a found footage horror company was because my sister knew one of the producers, and they had said, oh, we're looking for an assistant. I got that job through nepotism, which unfortunately big part of how this industry functions is like those jobs don't get advertised, and it's more like word of mouth, which is why I'm very big now on kind of opening doors for people kind of thing. And like you were saying, mother hen thing, it's more like a kind of paying my dues of like, this industry is hard to kind of get into. Getting that foot in the door there, which was like kind of a job that a lot of people would probably go, oh, they're not making anything like exciting or kind of like, you know, big releases or whatever. But being at a really small company who were making really kind of cheap to make films kind of thing meant that I was able to kind of see everything. So I was doing some development work, I was doing some production work, I was doing some post work, I was doing business and legal stuff. Like it was just a kind of 2-year kind of almost like mini film school in a way, very hands-on, very hilarious at some points. But I think I took that experience as being like, okay, cool, I can just suck this information up. I don't have a uni degree, I don't have film school, but I can kind of learn this on the job. And I think the industry is quite good at doing that. A lot of people are like, you don't need a uni degree. I'm always like, very much like, you definitely don't need a uni degree, but people with uni degrees need to recognize the confidence that a uni degree can give you. So I think if you're coming into the industry without one, it can feel a little bit daunting that you're not intelligent enough, that you're not academically smart. And that took a long time for me to get over as a person. But I kind of went from that job to doing a couple of production jobs on set. Loved being on set in theory, but also recognized that it wasn't going to be sustainable for my mental and physical health. And I kind of ended up accidentally stumbling into post-production, which is a part of the industry where it kind of has the beauty of the balance of being like, you know, Monday to Friday, 10 till 6, mostly all happening in Soho in London. So it had that kind of structure to it, but a lot of flexibility. And what I found from that as an aspiring director was that I was seeing all the mistakes they'd made on the shoot and how they were fixing them in post. And I was like, oh, this is going to be brilliant. It's going to teach me what I need to know, whilst also kind of having enough work-life balance that I could, you know, survive kind of thing. And so I worked in post-production for 10 years basically. And, you know, I think it's really kind of important to know that a lot of people, at that whole time, I was aspiring to make my own things. Like that whole time I knew I've never lost focus of what I wanted to be doing in this industry. But I also know and could see the merit in understanding when to share that desire and also when to kind of not share it, so that I would keep getting hired for these jobs as a post coordinator, where I would ultimately be getting more experience and learning more stuff. And I think that's a really important thing for young people to understand, is that there are no 24-year-old directors. There are very, very few and far between under 30 directors, like very rare. There's been a couple come through in the last couple of years and they're amazing people, but they are absolutely outliers compared to the rest of the industry. So you have to kind of view your career as play the long game and kind of be like, right, where can I pick up skill set and connections and networking and stuff like that easiest. And in post-production, in TV post-production, I spent pretty much all of my time hanging out with exec producers. I made lots of connections at post facilities, which meant that when I was making my own shorts, I could get post done very, very good deals kind of thing. So it just, you know, I didn't kind of know it going in, but it ended up being the greatest strategy move for my career. And what it meant coming back to Dope Fiend is just that, you know, when I came up for this idea for Dope Fiend, the minute I came up with the sound design idea, I knew how to do that because I know how post-production works. Like, and if you watch like the edit of Dope Fiend, it's extremely choppy and it has kind of some kind of funny effects to it in terms of like a moving aspect ratio, and I really messed with the edit quite a lot, and obviously I didn't edit it. I had amazing editors to work with on it, Helena Evans and Joseph Hart Green. But as a director, I know what a good edit looks like because I've spent so much time in edits through working in post. So therefore, because I know what a good edit looks like, I could then throw the good editing rule book out the window to create something very off-putting for the audience, like what I wanted to do with Dope Fiend. So yeah, that's just, sorry, that's a bit of a tangent, but I think it's kind of a big thing that I'm like really big on, is like understanding that careers don't happen overnight. There is no such thing as an overnight success, and it's all about the long game in this industry. Until relatively recently, the idea of being a multi-hyphenate in the industry was really frowned upon. So it was really encouraged that you were either a writer or a director or a producer. And I'm happy to be part of a generation that's kind of allowing people to think outside of that slightly, because for me, I wear different hats on different projects. So I've produced other people's work where I think they're really great projects and I want to back them. I write and direct my own shorts, and I want to write and direct my own features. But on television, I want to write and produce. I don't actually want to direct TV, because I know from having worked in TV for such a long time and having worked in film, the difference between those two formats and what those roles are, and ultimately like where I can best serve my projects. That being said, like I really encourage people to not be scared of multi-hyphenate thing. I do think there is a lot of merit within specializing. And I think in some ways we've almost gone the opposite direction, where like 10 years ago, you couldn't kind of multi-hyphenate between things. And now what I see is a lot of people who are really good writers trying to push themselves into directing because they think they need to be doing both, or like vice versa. And I think there's a lot of merit. You will often find that if you can kind of really focus on one of them, if you do one of them particularly well and focus on one of them, you can get yourself to a certain point where then you can kind of be considered. And I see some people get held back slightly by the feeling that they should be able to do it all. So I think it's just working out like what you kind of love and what you have the capacity to do. Yeah.
You write, direct, and produce in your own production company. What's your advice for any like emerging filmmakers that want to start your own production company?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because a production company, I get a lot of people ask, oh, like, how did you set up your production company? First and foremost, from a legal point of view, a production company is just a limited company. So you can register a limited company at any time through Companies House, all of that. However, it's more about the face of it. And so before you even have to go down the legal route of like registering a company or whatever, you can set up an Instagram page, you can set up a website, you can create a brand. And the reason why I think it's a good thing, if you're a producer or have a kind of producing kind of thing within it, it's really good to understand that like a production company is a way to have a face without it just being your face kind of thing. So I have Spinster there, which means that it's not just about me. It's kind of showing that there's a kind of desire for creativeness beyond just my projects. But what I hope is that everything that I work on Spinster is associated with, and I keep building that alongside my career so that hopefully I get to the point where it's like my first feature, TV series, like Spinster continues that association along so that hopefully at some point we can start having the money and also like kind of, you know, the trust to be producing other people's work, because I'm really passionate in the fact that I think I've got great stories to tell, but I think there's so many people out there with incredible stories to tell, and I want to help support them.
Dope Fiend has like a little mini cliffhanger at the end. Are we going to get a sequel?
No, we're not getting a sequel on Dope Fiend, but I love that you kind of picked up on the cliffhanger. I think there's elements of Dope Fiend which are fed into my feature that I'm now developing with Film 4. I didn't treat it as a proof of concept. So a proof of concept short is where you make a short that's like a teaser for a feature or a TV series that you want to do. I didn't treat Dope Fiend as a proof of concept, and I don't consider it a proof of concept, but I think it was a space to explore some of the kind of technology stuff that is incorporated into my feature idea that I'm developing. And also tone wise, because it's a little bit like, it's a comedy and it's sci-fi, but it's also a bit unusual kind of in that way, which is also my style.
So our last question is, what are your ambitions for the future? So like, what's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, so I just mentioned, like, I've just started the process of Film for commissioning my first feature development. So I'm kind of about to start the writing process on that, which will be really great. I love Film 4 as a kind of partner. They've just they like things that are outside the box kind of creatively, which is great for my brain. I'm also developing a TV series. I've just done another short recently, which is about to come out on Channel 4 on YouTube, called This Ain't Pretty Woman, and it's a kind of a surreal debate comedy. And yeah, at the moment, I think that's been the thing of I probably think I have one more short to do, because I've made a couple of shorts that have been quite like interestingly creative, and I want to make one that's kind of a little bit more like the kind of polished, slick, like I can transfer these creative ideas into being a feature, so that I've kind of got that. So I think I've probably got one more short in me, and otherwise I'm just really focusing on writing. And at the moment, I think it's good to acknowledge that the industry is going through a really weird time. It's basically kind of recalibrating after having a really big boom from 2018, 2019 that was only kind of, that was to do with the streamers, but then was kind of further impacted by COVID, of kind of, there was a big gap where nothing was getting made, and then everything was getting made. And so the industry is going through a bit of a recalibration time. And so for me, I'm kind of viewing the next couple of years of like locking myself away slightly and just continuing to process my craft, so that when in the next couple of years another kind of fruitful time for creativity comes through, I can kind of catch that wave and be part of a long form then. So yeah, that's my focus at the moment.
Honestly, I'm really hoping that fruitful time comes soon. I feel like the tax cut is going to help a little bit, but it's like it feels very insane in the industry right now.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap. I want to thank you so much, Rosanagh, for coming on. Please join us next week, where Beatrice will be interviewing Ava Grounds, and the BFI Future Film Festival is still open. So please feel free to send in your entries.
Thank you so much.